bangun pemuda-pemudi, bulatkan tekad pada Ibu Pertiwi. Serahkanlah jiwa dan ragamu, membangun bangsa. Marilah kita berkarya, membangun negara kita. Tunjukkan masa depanmu, UGJ tercinta. Bangunlah bangun UGJ tercinta, tunjukkanlah pengabdian untuk bangsa. Ciptakan citra kewibawaan kita, bersama junjunglah namamu. Marilah kita berkarya, membangun negara kita. Tunjukkan masa depanmu, UGJ tercinta, UGJ tercinta.
Bu.
Oke.
Oke.
Oke, alhamdulillah. Apa kabar, Bu?
Baik, alhamdulillah. Pak Rektor juga sudah masuk, Bu.
Oh, Pak Rektor sudah ada ya? Assalamualaikum, Pak Rektor. Apa kabar? Semoga sehat semua ya. Ibu-ibu, bapak-bapak, semua juga. Saya tidak begitu jelas, Bu, di tempat saya ini.
Tidak begitu jelas ya, Bu ya?
Ya, di tempat saya lah. Kalau saya, suaranya sudah oke di sana ya, Bu ya?
Suara oke, suara Ibu di sini oke.
Oke.
Suara kami di tempat Ibu tidak jelas.
Tidak berapa jelas. Sekejap ya.
Bentar ya, Bu ya.
Oke.
Pak Oto, kalau dari Malaysia kurang begitu jelas katanya suara. Suara kita yang diterima Ibu Razana di Malaysia. Tes, Bu, suaranya gimana, Bu?
Oke, pas.
Oh ya.
Jelas, ya. Kita sudah mau mulai ya, Bu ya. Alhamdulillah, akhirnya tiba juga hari ini.
Pak Rektor tadi disapa Ibu Razana, Pak Rektor.
Halo.
Assalamualaikum. Waalaikumsalam.
Ibu Dr. Razana.
Ya. Alhamdulillah, sehat-sehat aja ya.
Sehat aja, alhamdulillah.
Ya. Tahniah ya, Pak ya.
Iya.
Ya, penganjurannya bagus.
Alhamdulillah. Di Mara sudah mulai kuliah offline kah?
Belum lagi. Kita sekarang ini lagi ribut nih, Pak. Kesnya 1,000, 2,000 kesnya. Semalam 2,000 semalam kes positif.
Wow.
Ya. sekarang bermula November lah, early November, late October macam tu, dia semakin lipat balik.
1000 itu se-Malaysia.
1000 se-Malaysia, betul.
Malaysia.
Betul Pak. Ya, tapi semalam for the first time 2000 lah. Semalam 2000 berapa belas macam itu.
Ya sama lah dia kita.
Ya, ini susah ini mau settle ni masalah COVID. Ya Pak ya. Kita bersabar aja kita.
Kita bersabar aja.
Ya,
Nanti
betul.
vaksin nanti sudah ada tinggal.
Ya, insya-Allah. Tapi Bapak ni bunyi echo ya Pak?
Oh, gitu ya?
Ada echo bunyi.
Ada ekonya nih, Pak Oto, Ronald. Ada ekonya kata Prof. Rajana.
Saya kedengarannya echo.
Halo Prof. Prof. Rajana,
Ya.
tes.
Ya,
Masih
ya.
echo kah?
Masih ekonya.
Masih echo.
Ya, saya masih kedengaran ekonya.
Sebentar.
Okey. Tapi sudah jelas, suaranya sudah jelas, bagus. Dari tadi belum jelas. Ini sudah jelas tapi bersama eko.
Oke.
Nyonya tuh ya. Stop dulu, ini saya
Halo Prof. Rajana, masih
Ya,
echo kah?
saya. Ya, masih.
Masih echo ya?
Ya, masih eko. Saya tidak tahu kalau peserta lain okey atau tidak. Kalau tidak okey aja, tidak apa Pak. Cuma saya risau kalau others also actually can have the echo, so mungkin sedikit tidak selesa gitu. Tapi kalau saya seorang aja tidak apa Pak, okey aja.
Halo tes. Bagus ya? Ternyata yang lain bagus, Prof.
Oh, di saya saja ya ekonya. Okey, tidak apa. Okey, no problem. Langsung terus saja, tidak apa. Saya
Mungkin
cuma saya perlahankan sedikit speakernya aja.
Iya, oke.
Supaya kurang ekonya. Mungkin kerana jauh atau apa?
Karena jauh Malaysia kayaknya.
Oh iya, jauh sekali.
Oke.
bisa Pak. Tadi.
Tes.
Waalaikumsalam. Tes juga.
Oh, ini terlalu ke bawah. Apa kiri ya? Kiri kayaknya. Balik. Halo. Tes. Assalamualaikum.
Wassalam.
Test. 1, 2, 3. Test. We want to start this international conference. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin this international conference, there are some regulations that you have to obey as long as we are in this international conference. Please turn on your camera and dress politely with neat clothes. Please turn off the microphone. You have to mute that. Please, for question and answer session, participants are welcome to type the questions in chat column, and the moderator will select the questions to be answered. Participants must attend the event from start to finish as a condition to get an electronic certificate. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings on the air and always be happy. Alhamdulillah, let us always pray and praise for the presence of our God Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has bestowed upon us all his favors and gifts, so that at this time we are still given grace and guidance, and we can all gather together in states of healthy and well-afiat. And of course, we can attend the virtual activities scheduled for today in the working agenda, 25th November 2020, in the scientific program, the second International Symposium on Science, Engineering and Technology, International Symposium on Social Science, Education and Humanities in Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati, with the theme Navigating Volatility, Uncertainty, Complexity, Ambiguity through Innovation and Creativity. Prayers and greetings may it always be devoted to our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, also to his family, friends, and his ummah until the end of the age. On behalf of the committee, we would like to welcome you and thank you for virtual join this event. Very welcome for the Honorable Chairperson, Swadaya Gunung Jati Educational Foundation, Bapak Dadang Sukandar Kasidin, to the Honorable Secretary of Foundation, Ibu Haja Juwairia SHMH, to the Honorable Treasury of the Foundation, Ibu Haja Darliana SA SHMMMH, to the Honorable Foundation Expert Staff, Prof. Dr. Suherli Kusmana MPD, to the Honorable, of course, for our Rector, Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati, Bapak Associate Professor Dr. Haji Mukarto Siswoyo, Dr. Andes MSI. And for our special guest, to the Honorable Associate Professor Razana Juhaida Johari CAM from University Technology Mara, Malaysia, to the Honorable Dwayne Rai Komiyi, PhD from Virginia Commonwealth University, the United States of America, to the Honorable Professor Denise Marie Jepson from Macquarie University, Australia, to the Honorable Professor Delphak Oceandi, MD, PhD from Manchester University, the United States of Kingdom, to the Honorable Jean-Marie Panchemang from University of Poitiers, France, to the Honorable Ahmad Faris Marzi Zamzam Zain, MD, SPPD from Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati, Walet Hospital, Indonesia. To the Honorable all the Vice Rectors, to the Honorable the Head of Unit Department of UGJ, to the Honorable all the Faculty Deans, to the Honorable Postgraduate Director, and of course to the Honorable all the presenter and all participants in this international conference. Big thank you again and again to all attendees at this Zoom link who have joined this event as well as actively participating. As good citizens of Indonesia, of course we must respect the country's sovereignty. For that, let us sing the national anthem of our country, Indonesia Raya. From the real stage, it will be conducted by one of UGJ students. All of the audience here, please stand up.
Bangunlah jiwa bersemangat untuk
Thank you for the respect, and you may have a seat back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in preparation and implementation of today's agenda, let us listen to the report from the Dean of Faculty of Economics, UGJ, as a chairperson to this committee, to Ibu Professor Dr. Haja Ida Rosnida AKCA, respectively. The time is yours.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam
Good
warahmatullahi
morning, everyone.
wabarakatuh.
The honorable invited speakers, Associate from UITM Malaysia, Dwayne Ray Cormier, PhD from Virginia Commonwealth University, the United States of America, Professor Dennis Mary Jepson from Macquarie University, Australia, Professor Delphak Osendi, MD, PhD from University of Manchester, United Kingdom. Zeong Maripang Semang, University of Poitiers, France. Pak Ahmad, spesialis penyakit dalam, The Honorable Chairman of Swadaya Gunung Jati Education Foundation, Bapak Dadang Sukandar Kasidin, The Honorable Secretary Foundation, Bu Juaria SHMH, Treasury Ibu Darliana SE SHMH MM, The Honorable Professor Dr. Herli, The Honorable Rector of Swadaya Gunung Jati University, Associate Professor Dr. Bukarto Siswoyo, all the Vice Rector, Head of Institution, Agencies and Unit in Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati University, the Honorable of Deans and Postgraduate Director, the Honorable all participants and committees, welcome to the second ISSET and ISSEH event. Alhamdulillah, thanks to the grace of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati is able to hold another international conference event through because of the COVID-19 pandemic. This year it is held by online. The theme of this conference is navigating volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity through innovation and creativity. What we can report that this event is divided into two sessions, a seminar with invited speakers who are extraordinary and expert in their fields, who will share to add insight and open our scientific horizons. The second part is the paper presentation. We are excited to report that we have received as many papers, 25 for ISSET and 42 for ISSEH, from Malaysia, Pakistan, Australia, and of course from Indonesia. The presentation will be carried out by showing the video of each presenters who have been prepared beforehand. The output of this event in the form of publication in reputable international journal, Scopus Index Proceeding, and publication in national journal indexed by SINTA. All UGJ academic community, speakers, and all participants will have benefit from this event. I hope this event will run smoothly and successfully. Until we meet again at the third ISSET event, which inshallah, God willing, will be held in August 2021 on the Dream Cruise. Have a nice conference. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yeah, thank you very much for Ibu Profesor Dr. Haja Ida Roslida LKCA for the report. As an institution of higher education, Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati with motto Pintar, Performance, Integrity, Networking, Achievement, and Religious, surely on duty, the Rector has continued the progress of UGJ and support all the programs, especially for the international conference. So ladies and gentlemen, let's have welcoming speech from our Rector, and also as the sign of the opening this international conference, to Bapak Associate Professor Dr. Haji Mukarto Siswoyo, Dr. MSI, cordially very welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawala, la khawla wa la quwata illa billah, amma ba'du. His Excellency Associate Professor Razana Zuhaida Johari, CAM, from University Teknologi Mara, Malaysia. His Excellency Mr. Dwayne Rai Comier, PhD, from Virginia Commonwealth University, USA. His Excellency Professor Denise Mary Jepson, from Macquarie University, Australia. His Excellency Professor Delphak Ossendi, MD, PhD, from Manchester University, the United Kingdom. His Excellency Mr. Jean-Marie Pinsemin, from University of Poitiers, France. The Honorable Ahmad Faris Malfi Zamzam Zain, MD, SPPD, from Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati. His Excellency the Chief of Swadaya Gunung Jati Foundation, Ketua Yayasan Pendidikan Swadaya Gunung Jati, Mr. Dadang Sukandar Kasidin, and Secretary, Treasurer, and expert. The Honorable Vice Rector, the Deans of the Faculty, the Head of Institution, the Head of Department around UGJ, and especially the Honorable Chair of the Committee, Professor Dr. Hajaida Rosnida, SAMM, all the presenters and participants. Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah, the God Almighty, for His blessing, so we can attend for today's occasion, international conference virtually. Salawat and salam is given to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and pleasure to welcome you to the second International Symposium on Social Science, Education and Humanities, ISSEH, and the International Symposium on Science, Engineering, and Technology in Cirebon, West Java, Indonesia. On behalf of Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati, we extend our warmth, greatest, and high appreciation to all contributors of this symposium. Ladies and gentlemen, in the COVID-19 pandemic situation, we academics should not stop to activities, discuss, exchange ideas, and convey brilliant ideas to confront and overcome problems in this situation of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, VUCA, an unpleasant situation. But all of that, we must continue to move forward for the sake of sustainability and improvement of human civilization. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the second of international symposium organized by UGJ, Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati, along with the theme of navigating volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, VUCA, through innovation and creativity. In this conference, the presenters and authors will share their fresh ideas and thoughts as innovation to strengthen the power to optimize all potentials and resources, maintain and improve human welfare in the COVID-19 pandemic situation. Thus, it is expected that this international symposium will reach its provoking objective as indicated by the theme. These two symposiums are also hoped to the empowering forum of discussion to yield recommendations in order to contribute for the better future. Therefore, saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I officially open the second ISSET and ISSEH. Finally, we extend our greatest gratitude and highest appreciation to all committee, the organizing partnership, all the sponsors, and all contributors. For all participants, we do hope all of you enjoy this conference virtually. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yeah, we thank very much for Bapak Associate Professor Dr. Haji Mukarto Siswoyo, Dr. Andes MSE, for his welcoming speech, and at the same time that has done for opening this ceremony. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on the real stage or anywhere virtually, we are going to the opening ceremony by taking photo together on the camera as a symbol that this international will be start. Ladies and gentlemen, we need several minutes to take the photos, all of you, with all the leadership in the foundation, director, vice rectors, and all chairperson for department in Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati, all invited speakers, and all the participants. For all mentioned above, please come to the stage, and for all participants, please put yourself in front of the camera. Thank you. Once again, for all participants virtually, please put yourself on the camera because we will screen your shots with the photos of the leadership in Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati. Yeah, thank you very much.
Pak Ustaz.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, now we are in the core time, plenary. In this first plenary will be delivered by 3 invited speakers. The first speaker is Ibu Associate Professor Razana Johari, CAM, from University Technology Malaysia, with the theme Addressing the Economic Challenge of COVID-19 in Developing Countries. And the second speaker, we will have Mr. Dwayne Rai Comey, PhD from Virginia Commonwealth University, the United States of America, with the theme Researching Social Justice in Education in the Time of Pandemic. And then the third speaker is Ibu Professor Denise Murray Jepson from Macquarie University, Australia, with the theme Management Strategy for Business and Economy in the COVID-19 Pandemic Era. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this first plenary will be conducted by our moderator, Bapak Dedi Muhammad Siddiq SHI, MA, MDP, PGDIP, PhD. I'm so sorry. And then, as we know, that Mr. Dedi Muhammad Siddiq has a workplace in Faculty of Economics, University of Swadaya Gunung Jati, Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati, and then as an environmental impact assessment team at PT Bangun Cipta and Lestari Kreasindo in Karawang, West Java. and his formal education, he got BA on Islamic Law at Faculty of Islamic Law, State Institute for Islamic Studies, Wali Songo, Semarang, Central Java. And then he got MA on the Interdisciplinary Islamic Studies concentration on social work, State Islamic University, Sunan Kalijaga, Yogyakarta. And then he got MDP, the University of Queensland, Australia, specialization on planning for social development. And then he got summer course on social science at McGill University, Montreal, Canada. And then his postgraduate diploma on research methods and skill, Maastricht School of Management at Maastricht University, the Netherlands. From September until December 2014. And then the last one, he got PhD on Management Macquarie University, Sydney, Australia. And then he has got scholarship from the U.S. Department of State, Indonesian Education Scholarship, the Netherlands Organization, Master Degree Scholarship, Ministry of Religious Affairs Indonesia, Government Scholarship, and from Canadian International Development Agency. And then he got some awards from as the first winner, 3-minute thesis competition. And then his award as a professional lecturer on development economic, as a Dean Commendation for High Achievement from Dean of Faculty of Social and Behavioral Science in the University of Queensland, Australia, and as a Dean Commendation for High Achievement from Dean of Faculty of Social and Behavioral Science, the University of Queensland, Australia, and then has award as a Dean Commendation for High Achievement from Dean of Faculty of Social and Behavioral Science, the University of Queensland, Australia. And then the Best Graduate of Islamic Law Faculties at Institute for Islamic Studies, Wali Songo, Semarang. And the last one as the first winner of Speech Contest, Mosque and Islamic Boarding House, Youth in Semarang Municipality. Well, for Mr. Dedi, we will hand it over to you, sir.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Our respected scholars and keynote speakers, Excellency Associate Professor Razana Johida Johari, CA, and from University Technology Mara, Malaysia. Excellency Dr. Duane Ray Comey from Virginia Commonwealth University, United States of America. And latest information that I got that he will join with us around 5 minutes. Excellency Professor Dennis Meru Jepson from Macquarie University, Sydney, Australia. And the latest information is that she will join with us in 10 a.m., so around 30 minutes again. Excellency Chairperson of Swadaya Gunung Jati Education Foundation, Bapak Haji Bapak Dadang Sukandar Kasidin, and all foundation leader staff, Excellency Rector of University of Swadaya Gunung Jati, Dr. Mokarto Siswoyo, Dr. Andes MSE, the Honorable of the Head of UGJ Institutes, and all deans of all faculties at UGJ and also postgraduate director, and all presenters and participants of this international conference, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me and also for UGJ that today we have a meeting, a great event. It is our second International Symposium on Science, Engineering and Technology, ISSET, and International Symposium on Social Science, Education and Humanities, or ISSEH. This is our second international conference regarding these two topics that's so important for us. And the theme that we bring up now is about navigating volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, or VUCA through innovation and creativity. We're greatly honored because three excellent respected international scholars, Associate Professor Razana, Dr. Dwayne, and Professor Denise Mary Jepson will join with us and share their expertise, experiences, and information regarding the topic related to our theme for today's event. As it is said by the rector of UGJ that pandemic has affected all aspects of our life, including education, and has forced academics to abruptly migrate to online teaching and learning. And these affect research and innovation initiatives. Of course, seeing this situation, UGJ is one of the universities in Indonesia having great concern regarding this issue and wants to dedicate itself to participate in the global conversation to deal with the volatile, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity situation due to the pandemic of COVID-19. That's why we then have an initiative to hold this great conversation in International Conference of Second ISSET and ISSEH. And we invited respected scholars from some countries. And these three keynote speakers that we're gonna have now is coming from 3 different regions, 3 different countries. The first one is Associate Professor Razana Joheda Johari from Malaysia, representing Southeast Asia. The second one, Dr. Dwayne, representing United States. And then the third one, Professor Denise Jepson, representing Australia region. So it has different in terms of the regions and also maybe culture. So we're greatly happy to have you all 3 presenters for this occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, going to the first presentation, because as I got information that our respected speakers, that is Dr. Dwayne and also Professor Denise Jepson, will join with us in some minutes later. So I would like to welcome the first presenter, our neighbor, Associate Professor Razana, to present his presentation that has been prepared by her regarding addressing the economic challenge of COVID-19 in the developing countries. Before that, I would like to briefly introduce you who Associate Professor Razana Joheda Johari. So please let me share you some short presentation. I'm sorry, it's not this. Associate Professor Dr. Razana Joheda Johari is Associate Professor, is currently attached as the Department of Professional Accounting Studies, Faculty of Accountancy, University Technology Maram, Malaysia. And she is a member of Chartered Accountant registered with Malaysian Institute of Accountants, acting. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, I haven't got the screen. Yeah. I'm sorry for the technical issue. So I repeat again, Associate Professor Razana Juhaida Johar is an Associate Professor and is currently attached at the Department of Professional Accounting Studies, Faculty of Accountants, University of Technology, Mara, Malaysia. She is a member of Chartered Accountant registered with Malaysian Institute of Accountants, act as a visiting professor in Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta and Universitas Swadaya Gunung Jati, Indonesia. And she also serves as an editorial board member of International Business Research Journal, Canadian Center of Science and Education, Journal of Public Affairs, Online Library, Jurnal Akuntansi dan Akuntansi Keuangan dan Bisnis, Politeknik Caltex Riau, Indonesia, and a fellow member of World Business Institute Australia. Her main research interest is auditing, forensic accounting, accounting ethics, education, corporate governance, and her academic works are published in a number of Scopus, ISSEH, ARR, and other research journals. Her academia works have received several research awards in the international and national conferences and product innovation exhibition. So I think she is a great scholar with many achievements that she had during her career. So it's excellent. It's excellent. So we're gonna have the very, very experienced and well-known professor from UITM, Associate Professor Dr. Razana Juhaida Johari, that will explain to us regarding the topic on addressing the economic challenge of COVID-19 in developing countries. Ladies and gentlemen, before starting this meeting, maybe some of you is not quite familiar with English, so maybe later on, maybe sometimes I will mix my speech with Bahasa and translate some of the sentences from the speakers to ensure that you understand the message the speakers try to deliver in this event. Oke, Bapak Ibu, mungkin nanti sekali-sekali saya akan memixkan pembicaraan saya in Bahasa to make sure, to memastikan that you understand what the speakers want to say. Okay. Dear ladies and gentlemen, so I would like to welcome the first presenter, that is Associate Professor Razana Juhaida Johari, PhD, from Faculty of Accountancy, University of Technology, Mara, Malaysia. Okay, Dr. Razana, time is yours, around 20 until 30 minutes.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, thank you to our Mr. Dedi, the moderator of today, for the brief information about me. Yeah. So first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, because with His grace, all of us can be here together this morning, and salawat and salam to our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Next, my appreciation goes to the Rector of UGJ, okay, Prof. Dr. Mukapto Siswoyo, the Head Foundation of PSGJ, all UGJ lecturers, and not to be forgotten, to the Symposium Committee headed by my dear Professor Dr. Ida Rosnida, okay, for successfully holding this event, though we are still facing various challenges of pandemic COVID-19. Finally, I would also like to welcome all esteemed symposium participants to the second ISSET and ISSEH 2020. So today I am very pleased to share with all of you a little input on addressing the economic challenges of COVID-19 in developing country. All right, so next slide please. Okay, so this is my presentation outline, which it could help in achieving my task for today. Okay, so next. Okay, to start with, okay, the COVID-19 outbreak started in December 2019 in Wuhan, in China, and it continues to spread across the world. And as per today, okay, more than 59 million cases of the virus had been recorded worldwide. Okay, if you can see on the screen, it is stated 48,000 because this one is the one that I actually retrieved on the November 22nd. All right, but this morning I checked, the figures already being increased, okay, to 59 million cases, more than 59 million cases. Okay, so it has been recorded worldwide, and nearly 1.4 million have died due to this pandemic. So in this strongly connected and integrated world, the impacts of the disease go away beyond the mortality. And as we all know, yeah, the world economy is now in crisis, and it is the worst, right, since the Great Depression of the year 1930s. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so this one is regarding the COVID-19 impact, yeah. So obviously, the COVID-19 impacted economic activities badly, yeah, due to the underutilization of labor and capital, okay, an increase in international trade costs, a drop in travel services, and a redirection of demand away from activities that require proximity between people. So based on the IMF forecast, okay, for April 2020, the forecast has been done in 2020, that world economic growth is at a negative rate of 3%. And for the first time since the economic downturn in the 1930s, both developed and developing countries contracted economy. Okay, so I would also like to share one research update. Yeah, the research is conducted in this year, 2020. Okay, it is mentioned that the global gross domestic product fall by 2% below the benchmark for the world, and okay, 2.5% it is only for developing countries. All right, whereas the industrial companies, they experience 1.8%. Okay, so the trade conflicts as well as the political unrest in some countries will intensify the situation, and at once it will give more negative impact to the world economy. But okay, to be noted that in June, okay, although in June many economies tentatively reopened from the lockdown, and the global economy started to climb, right, from the depths to which it has plunged in April. But with the pandemic spreading and accelerating in places, many countries slowed reopening, and some are still reinstating the partial lockdowns. All right, and the fact is, to getting back to the global economics pre-pandemic levels of activity, many countries remain prone to setbacks. Okay, so with this situation, okay, the containment and the mitigation measures are essential to limit the spread of the virus and to save lives. That is most important. Okay, so these things, okay, these activities will come with a cost. Okay, as the shutdowns imply the reducing economic activity. All right, so next, okay, next slide please. Okay, as to showcase the impact of COVID-19, okay, I would like to draw our attention to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, okay, the SDGs, that have been adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015. Okay, so this SDG act as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people are enjoying peace and prosperity by year 2030. But, okay, before that, okay, from the 17th SDG, okay, so please click once on the slide. Yeah, SDG 8 is purposely designed to promote inclusive and sustainable economic growth. Okay, so to be noted, before the pandemic, the progress in attaining all the 70 SDGs has been mixed, all right? But however, the pandemic is likely to adversely impact these 7 of the 17 goals, okay, as I shown on the slide, okay? This is the 12 SDGs that being impacted, all right, by the COVID-19. Only 5 SDGs is maintained now. Okay, so this slide, okay, is about the COVID-19 and economic challenges. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so without doubt, the economic and financial shocks related with the pandemic and the impact of COVID-19 on the world economy as a whole has been stressful. All right, So according to the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to huge economic disruption around the world. All right, the massive spread of the virus has affected the stock markets, causes disruption to industrial production, okay, the financial market volatility, and also rising uncertainty in all types of economic activities. All right, and the second one, okay, the pandemic is also proven to have a devastating impact on global unemployment. Okay, as we know that the employment rate is expected to rise to two figures, okay, in United States, India, Canada, Spain, and China. And it is also reported that more than 1 in 6 young people have stopped working since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. All right, so while those who remain employed, okay, have seen that their working hours being cut by 23%, okay, in which this has reduced their earnings of income. All right, and as we notice also, tourism is one of the economic sectors that was most affected by the pandemic due to the closure of borders, okay, the travel bans, and also the lockdown measures. Okay, so from the analysis conducted, it is expected that the international travel arrivals in 2020 may decrease by 60 to 80%, okay, compared with the previous year 2019. Okay, so this is a very huge impact on the tourism sector. Okay, so obviously all countries experience the economic fallout, which has been massive with terrible consequences, particularly in the developing countries. Okay, as most of the developing countries are having lack of resources and capacity to deal with a systematic shock of this nature. All right, this might be due to their large informal sectors, limited fiscal space, and also poor governance, okay, that make the developing countries particularly vulnerable to the pandemic and the measures to contain it. All right, so next slide, please. Okay, so to demonstrate of how developing countries addressing the economic challenges, I would like to share some inputs from Malaysian perspective, all right, because Malaysia also included as one of the developing countries. Okay, so I would like to share here the recent scenario of COVID-19 in Malaysia. All right, so currently, okay, we are having 43,000 confirmed cases, more than 43,000 confirmed cases. Badly enough, okay, in late of October, all right, the numbers, okay, the positive numbers of people who actually committed with positive COVID-19 being increasing so dramatically. All right, and if I can share, yesterday only, for the first time in history, Malaysian history of COVID-19, we are having more than 2,000 positive cases. This is quite shocked actually, because before this, during March, April, we also are shocked, okay, by this pandemic. But at that time, the numbers people of getting positive COVID-19 is less than 1,000. But then now, it is like constantly with the 4-digit figures of positive patients of COVID-19. Yeah. So the death, okay, Alhamdulillah, is still low compared to other countries. Okay, 303. All right, 303. Okay, so now, okay, next slide, please. Okay, we proceed with the economic challenges that faced by Malaysia. Okay, next slide. Next slide, Sandra. Thank you. Okay, so like other countries, okay, Malaysia is also facing a rather bitter challenge. Unemployment rate in Malaysia was at 3.9%, or around 610,000 people by March 2020. Yeah, and according to the forecast of the Department of Statistics, okay, on the 14th May 2020, unemployment rate is expected to rise to 5.5%, or more than 860,000 people unemployed for the whole of 2020. So this is the expectation. Yeah. So taking account these challenging situations, okay, the Malaysian economy has contracted, okay, in the second quarter of this year, following the various efforts, okay, that has been conducted to curb the spread of the COVID-19 epidemic globally and domestically. So the sudden enforcement of the MCO, Movement Control Order, lockdown and the travel restrictions have significantly disrupted business activities in various sectors. All right. So this has affecting people's income and causing economic chaos in the country. Yeah. So according to MBank Group chief economist, the direct damage caused by the virus can be seen in the tourism and travel industries. Okay, the same pattern with the global situations also. Manufacturing, construction, mining, and agriculture. So many workers being laid off and others being placed on unpaid leave. All right. So like other countries also, the nation's tourism industry has been crippled with an estimated loss of RM 3.37 billion in the first 2 months of the year. Yeah, so this is a big losses actually to the country. And some of the forced closure of small businesses, mainly the small and medium-sized enterprises and services, might and has led to permanent shutdowns and many losing their jobs, as well as individuals that going bankrupt. Yeah. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so now in order to minimize the economic impact of this pandemic, all right, Malaysian government has taken several actions to recover the economy through the economic stimulus packages. Okay, so initially, okay, as we can see on the slide now, okay, at the end still the previous slide, please. Previous slide, yeah, okay. So initially, at the end of February 2020, the government announced a 20 billion financial stimulus package. Okay, so this package is intended to mitigate the impact of COVID-19. All right, so this package based on the 3 major strategies. Okay, the first one is to lessen the effect of COVID-19. Yeah, and the second one to promote, okay, the people-based economic growth, and third one is to encourage the quality investments. Okay, so slides 11 to 13. Okay, next slide, 11 to 13. Okay, shows or lists some examples of the initiative to stimulate the travel industry. Okay, to ease the cash flow and also providing support to affected individuals. Okay, so as we can see here, this slide shows the activities, okay, that relate to lessen the effect of COVID-19. Okay, next. This one, next. Okay, this one is the activities that relates to promote people-based economic growth. All right, as you can see, okay, there are the initiatives that have been taken by the government. And next slides, okay, these are among the initiatives that also been taken to encourage the quality investments. All right, okay, so next. Okay, this is the second package. Okay, that company, the management, the countries, okay, the government introduced. Okay, and this package is introduced on 11 March 2020. All right, about 3 weeks after the first package. Okay, so this is when the Economic Action Council, okay, being established to address the various economic continuous and emerging issues that relates to COVID-19. All right, so this council has revisited, all right, and revised the stimulus package 1, and they actually adding up several initiatives, okay, with the aim to ease the monetary problems due to rising cases of COVID-19 and the implementation of the MCO by the government. Yeah, okay, so next slides. Okay, so these are among the major initiatives, okay, that has been announced in package 2. Okay, so basically, the initiative in package 2 are focused to support the Ministry of Health, the bank's moratorium, and also the assistance to small business owners. All right, in which I think for the nation, okay, for the people, okay, then we are very much appreciated. Okay, the bank's moratorium initiative. Okay, where we can actually save the cash money, okay, to be actually safe for these current pandemic issues. All right, Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the next stimulus package introduced by the government is known as Prihatin package. Okay, and this new package serves as part of continuous efforts to reduce the effects of COVID-19. Yeah, so this Prihatin package is worth RM 250 billion and has been designed to safeguard the people's welfare, to support businesses, okay, including SMEs, because as we know, SMEs are the most affected industry companies, right, in Malaysia, and to strengthen the economy. Of course, the purpose is to strengthen the economy. So figure 1 in the next slide, okay, lists the support and assistance, okay, announced under the Prihatin package. Okay, so we have a lot here, all right, and I think we can proceed to the next slides. Okay. Okay, so about 3 months after the third package, okay, in June, okay, the government once again came out with a new package named as Penjana package. All right, so this plan is an inclusive and holistic approach to Malaysia's economic recovery, and it support the economy for operate in new normal, right, through 3 key thrusts. Okay, the first one is to empower people. The second one, to propel the business. Okay, and the third one is to stimulate the economy. All right. Next slide. In total, okay, there are 40 initiatives worth RM 35 billion, and from this amount, RM 10 billion is a direct fiscal injection from the government. So in general, COVID-19 has changed the way of how economy operates. All right. So in the effort to make Malaysia as a major investment destination, it is important that government to tell the world that Malaysia's economy remains competitive and is actually open and ready for businesses. Okay. So for that purposes, Peneraju includes several investment packages and programs, incentive tax exemptions, and inclusive the financial facilities. Yeah, that one is being included into this Penjana package, because as I mentioned just now, this package is actually meant for the economic recovery. All right, this is in June. Okay, because at that time the situations are become better. All right, and as we can see in Malaysia in August, okay, the schools are reopened. All right, and the restrictions for the MCO already stopped. Right, because at that time the cases of positive COVID is only below 10 cases like that. Okay, so we are quite happy that time. Okay, our life like come back to normal before the pandemic. Okay, but as I mentioned just now, okay, in October it started to rebound back. Yeah. Okay, so basically there are 4 stimulus packages, yeah, that have been introduced in Malaysia. Okay, so this is about the economic implications, okay, from the stimulus package. All right. Okay. Okay, so now we proceed with some economic implications, okay, as shown on the slides. Okay, so firstly, Malaysia managed to secure some matching grants of RM 1.2 billion with the international investors in the process of digital business. Okay, so we can see the benefit of the stimulus packages that already been introduced, okay, before this. Okay, the 4 stimulus package. Okay, and as of 2nd of June, the Department of Statistics, right, found approximately 12.7 million or 83.5% of employees have started working, compared to only 10.2 million or 67% on May 17. Okay, so this is related to when the business are being reopened. Okay, the schools reopen, the businesses, the offices also reopen. Okay, so in terms of job secured, the packages managed to save over 2.4 million jobs. All right, reducing the burden of cash flow of nearly 11 million people as well as providing support to over 300,000 companies. Okay, so basically, okay, as we can see from the second diagram, the below diagram, okay, on the government incentive, the response on the government incentive, okay, 52.1 companies and business firms stated that the Prihatin package can ease their burden, and 71.9% of companies and business firms are satisfied and very satisfied on how the government handles COVID-19, right? Okay, so it can be looked here, there is a positive impact, all right, of the packages that been introduced. Okay, Alhamdulillah. Okay, next. So this is the calls to action, yeah, for the post-COVID rebuilding and recovery. Okay, so in the face of COVID-19, there are 3 critical calls to action that relates to individual, organization, and country. Okay, so for the individual, okay, there is a need to encourage for reskilling, okay, redeployment, enhancing entrepreneurial mindset and innovators, okay, to become innovators. Okay, and this is very important to be instilled into the mind of the people, of the Malaysian people. Why? Because the earlier the changes are better, as a fast reflective individuals will be the one who can survive in this challenging situation. We can see that graduates now cannot be demanded for the work that will be that equivalent to their qualifications, right, due to this COVID-19. Okay, the very high competitions for employment, right? So they have to think otherwise on how to survive. They might actually come and make business on their own, all right? As we can see also, okay, due to the pandemic, there are a lot of business opportunities, okay, that has been grown up, all right? The small business opportunities like the Grab, the what we call the packaging foods whatsoever. Okay, so these are the things that need to be reinstilled or instilled into the mind of the young people in Malaysia actually. Okay, so whereas for the organization, okay, it is very important the company to revisit their vision, mission and goals. All right, they need to redesign on their business model or strategy in order to sustain in this new normal business environment. Okay, they cannot be stick to the one that they already formed, okay, for the last 2 years, for the last 3 years. Okay, they need to revisit their vision, mission and goals. Okay, need to suit with the current environment, because this pandemic effect will be last for the long period. It is not for the short period, all right? The impact of COVID-19 on the world economy. Okay, whereas the last one for the country, okay, if possible, they actually needs to constantly create the trade and investors friendly economic reforms as to stimulate the economy. All right, they need to look or upgrade the infrastructure, okay, for a connected and sustainable future, as well as other measures in order to support the nation progress. Okay, as we can see previously, we never had this such of conferences like this online, but then now with these pandemic situations, okay, all countries in the world are actually transformed, all right, make it realize that this such of intellectual discussion also can be conducted online, where I'm in Malaysia and the participants are all in Indonesia. Yeah, but we have to suit, right? We have to suit it. So that's why we need a support from the government, okay, to support us with the facilities, with the infrastructure that could help this to be real, all right, to be real. And on top of that, okay, we have to note that with the great economic challenges in this pandemic, okay, certain costs of what I have mentioned just now might only grow in urgency. Yeah. So next, in addition, okay, I would also like to share the World Economic Forum 2020 report, right, that has highlighted the need for countries to build greater interconnectivity and resilience to survive future surprises. Okay, so in particular, developing countries' economies must continue to boost socio-economic inclusion and invest in infrastructural development to ensure connectivity, as I mentioned just now, yeah, food security and healthcare capacity in the times of crisis. Okay, it is mentioned that immediate priority for governments and policymakers is to address the impact of the pandemic. And for this, they must protect their people on two fronts, okay, which is for health and also livelihood. This is the most important thing, all right? So, next slide. Okay, finally, in the face of this ongoing crisis, okay, it is clearly that the government is aware of the challenges faced by the people, business, and the economy as a whole. Okay, the government has already and will continue to take action to protect life, support businesses, and also strengthen the country's economy. Okay, so as for that, in addressing the economic challenges of COVID-19, yeah, the policymakers of each country, regardless of developing or developed countries, okay, need to weigh carefully the effectiveness and socio-economic consequences of containment and mitigation policies. Yeah, from the measures taken, as I have shared just now, it is noted that the economic policy in the short term, okay, has focused on providing emergency relief to vulnerable populations and affected businesses. Okay, so this goal is not to stimulate the economy, which is impossible given the supply restricting containment measures, but it is rather to avoid mass layoff and bankruptcies. All right, we want to maintain actually. Okay, so whereas in the medium term, okay, the macroeconomic policy should turn to recovery measures, which typically involve monetary and fiscal stimulus. Okay, however, okay, to be noted, in many developing countries, stimulus may be less effective because monetary transmission is weak and fiscal space and fiscal multipliers are often small. Yeah. So with these limitations, okay, I think the government need to actually suit, okay, the stimulus and also the aim to actually regain back, okay, the country's economic peacefully. Okay. So next one, okay. To conclude, right, there are three practical goals for macroeconomic policy in developing countries. Firstly, is to avoid the tendency of financial variables to fluctuate around a trend. Okay. Secondly, to ensure that the continuity of public services for the economy. And finally, to support the vulnerables. And like it or not, yeah, this pandemic is actually calling for well-designed government and effective public service delivery, all right, the practices for macroeconomic stability and the proper governance that could serve in good and bad times. Yeah, so next slide. With that, okay, I thank you everybody for listening. Okay, I hope that I could actually already share some of the inputs regarding of how developing countries is actually addressing the economic challenges due to COVID-19 impact. Yeah, so with that, thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much for Dr. Rozana Joheda Johar. It's so interesting. So I read the slides one by one, and also I found some very interesting and very tidy presentation, step-by-step information that you provided. Thank you so much. And also, there are an interesting fact from Malaysia that we can learn. That is, in fact, the people feel satisfied with what the government do regarding how to deal with the COVID-19.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit different with the fact in Indonesia. I haven't heard that the people feel satisfied. Not sure, maybe I don't know, but so far I haven't heard that. And it's very good in Malaysia that people are satisfied with what the government has done regarding how to deal with the COVID-19. I think it's interesting to be discussed later.
All right.
However, because we have another two invited international scholars, firstly, I would like to welcome Dwayne. Hello, Dwayne. Dr. Dwayne Rai.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. How are you? How are you?
I'm pretty good. Pretty good.
Good, good. How are you, man? If
for
in the
having-
United States, man, but in Australia, how are you, mate? Good day, mate. And also, I would like to welcome also my beloved professor, my beloved supervisor. Hello, Denise. Professor
Didi.
Denise Jackson. Great to
Hello,
see you.
Didi. Hello, everybody. Wish I was there.
Really happy. I would like to introduce Dr. Zazana Juhaida Johari, another presenter for these sessions.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
this is a respected scholar from Malaysia, and she has built a lot of cooperations with UGJ, especially with my dean of the Faculty of Economics. And I hope in the next future, Dr. Dwayne and also my professor Dennis Jackson will do the same thing and have many collaboration with us. Great. Okay, for the second presentation, who's gonna go first, Dwayne or Denise? Which one? Dwayne first or Denise first?
I can go.
Dwayne. Okay. Sorry. Yes, then because in your place now it's getting late, right? Getting night.
Yeah, but it's okay. I was actually engaged, so I can probably even stay up and listen to the next. As well.
Wow, great! Thanks so much. Well, Dwayne, we'll talk. Before that, I would like to share the CV, the short CV, or for Dwayne. Can I please share the yes. Myself, I will share the short CV of Dwayne. Yes, this biographical sketch of Dwayne Ray Cormier. Is that correct? Dwayne Ray Cormier, PhD.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. He's an assistant professor, Department of Foundations of Education, School of Education, Virginia Commonwealth University, and sorry, again, it's a technical issue. Okay, thank you for the technical stuff. This is a Dwayne short CV. So now you work in Pennsylvania State University. Oh, sorry. I think you graduate from Pennsylvania State University, Doctor of Philosophy in Curriculum and Instruction with an emphasis in Curriculum and Supervision. And also you did your master in Xavier University of Louisiana, New Orleans. And also for your master again. So you've got two masters, right, Dwayne?
Yeah, too many of
Two
them.
masters too. Wow, great. And Florian AM University. Wow, great. And also you got your bachelor in psychology. Oh, psychology, that's interesting. It's a bit the same with Denise Jepson, in psychology. It's very nice. And then this one is appointments or work experiences. Now he's an assistant professor and ICUB visiting scholar at Virginia Commonwealth University School of Education, Foundation of Education, July until present. And also before that, he has done many things here, including become the teacher, right? Become the teacher. That's great.
Yep.
So this is his publication and a lot of grant activity that he got from National Science Foundation and several other sponsors. That's great. Thanks so much. That's great. Dwayne. Now our turn is to have the presentation of the Dwayne and his and he's going to talk about what is it? About researching social justice in education during COVID-19. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's great. Thanks so much. So I think it's so interesting as well, looking for how social justice should be studied in education during COVID-19, because sometimes for Indonesian context, because now I also preparing some papers regarding the impact of the COVID-19 to education activities. It's so interesting, many issues that may be very interesting to be researched. I think from your presentation we're gonna have something that also can enrich our ideas about how the researching social justice in this pandemic era. Well, for Dr. Dwayne Rai Comia, I would like to welcome you to present your presentation.
Thanks for having me. And I just wait for it to go up. Thanks for having me at the Second International Symposium on Science, Engineering, and Technology, and International Symposium on Social Sciences and Education and Humanities. And just want to thank y'all for having me, and I'll begin sharing my research. You can advance to the next slide, please. Essentially, I was asked to do a presentation on research in social justice and education during COVID. Currently, I'm doing a study that I'm going to kind of share some findings from my study, and then talk about how the methods and the process that I use in my study could be helpful within your respective context. But first, I will broadly discuss why we should do studies during COVID. I will share some insights, and then I will discuss emergent and potential applications. Also, you can follow me on Twitter. Feel free to hashtag or share comments about this presentation as I present on Twitter. Next slide. You can skip again. So we're going to broadly discuss why thinking ahead. Next slide. So essentially, I want to spend a little time here and talk about why, at least in my context, why I took up this study, and how it might be helpful within yours. Broadly, we have the opportunity to kind of get some new knowings and understanding with regard to schooling within a pandemic context. I think first, the opportunity presented itself in a more forceful way. I don't think any of us wanted to endure a pandemic, but we haven't really had information about how to do schooling in a pandemic. All the history or scholarship with regard to pandemic was kind of historical. So you think about the 1918 pandemic, which was known as the Spanish flu, but now it's just referred to as the 1918 pandemic. It talked about school in a historical context, but it was essentially an historian essentially gathering information from secondary or sources, which wasn't firsthand or from stakeholders who were actually enduring the pandemic in real time. Next, we would talk about the potential impact. So as we understand more information about people's, living during a pandemic, this information would be experiential knowledge, meaning it comes from the people who are actually doing the work in schools. And then you can use a host of social science perspectives and mixed methodology approaches. And the research method I use was able to be done synchronous and asynchronous platforms and modalities. And then lastly, the information that was gained, or that is being gained from this study, can be used for how to essentially make decisions as COVID-19 goes away. But then also we can think about how might this information be useful for future pandemics or crises such as natural disasters, tsunamis, hurricanes or typhoons, etc. This study is really trying to understand how do we mitigate the schooling disruptive, like the disrupting of schooling during any of these kind of natural disasters or global pandemics. We can go next slide. I'm going to share some insights about my study. Next slide, please. So the study that I'm currently doing and wrapping up, essentially I wanted to know how was the school systems in my region or my area was prepared for COVID-19 during COVID-19 school closures. This essentially be equated to, your elementary or secondary schooling processes, but I think this also has application into higher education. We know that in the United States, we have 50 states, and each state essentially can make their own decisions. So we don't have a national kind of mandate on how to respond to the pandemic. Luckily, in my context, schooling started. So it was in March, so schools was closed, canceled for the year, and then they returned back to school in the fall semester, if you will. And they did it in a, hybrid, like doing it online or remote learning. Right now, they are talking about students returning back to schools. I just came off another Zoom call, and teachers are actually frantic because we are actually enduring a large third spike right now. So it doesn't really make sense for us to go back to school right now. So, so the project summary, this was, I used concept mapping. It was done in 2 urban school settings. I will define urban schools a little bit later. This study was exploratory, it was participatory, and I used a concept mapping through a online platform that was enabled us to collect and analyze data via focus groups with information generated by the educational stakeholders who are actually on the ground level of the school community. And then the findings from this study will have immediate impact. We can make preparedness checklists, surveys, resource guides, and then we can also inform policy. Next slide, please. So the context and sampling, essentially, I sampled 2 urban schools, which an urban school in this context is understood as an educational setting in which outside of school factors such as housing, poverty, and transportation are directly connected to what happens in schools. A lot of time, urban is a term that gets misused a lot, and you may think of urban as like maybe African American people or Black people or Latinx people. Really, we want to understand urban as a context that has a host of challenges, and those challenges essentially affect the teaching and learning process, right? So this may be equivalent to, schools that are maybe overpopulated in large metropolitan centers, or schools that may be distant from these urban centers or in rural communities. So just thinking about the context in which people have to work and learn within. Urban schools in America context mostly have a majority minority context, meaning that there are more Black and racial or ethnic minorities than white people. We understand education in America is highly correlated to your wealth and your race, but maybe in your context it can be geography, it can be place, it can be something like that. So as I talk about these things, I will try to go in and out and try to draw an appropriate comparison how you may be able to do the inquiry. Also, urban schools, again, have that population. They usually are under-resourced and have the least qualified or credentialed teachers. Next slide, please, Jeff. I'm thinking I'm controlling my own slide. So essentially, I sampled 2 schools. I sampled school A is a school that essentially is located in the state capital of Virginia. And then school B is a school that's about 30 miles away. They both are urban emergent schools. Rich Milner provided a typology for urban education. So there's 3 types of schools he talked about. He talked about a urban intensive, that's like a large city. Like you can think of like in Malaysia or, a large city. You can think about urban emergent and a large city with 1 million plus people in it. Urban emergent is a city that's less than 1 million people, but not quite as small as a rural community. And then his third typology was urban characteristics, meaning schools that may be located in suburbs or rural communities that had some of the same challenges as these urban emergent and intensive schools. So for this is, you can think of this as a pilot study. I'm actually about to ask for more funding to do this study across the whole region that I live within. And this would be, and then essentially for this study, we had educational stakeholders who volunteered were teachers, English language learners. These are people who teach students who are acquiring English as additional language, parents. We had division school leaders. You can think of like a superintendent. We had school leader administrators like principals, vice principals, and then we had teachers. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about concept mapping. I think this is what I'm very, very excited about. And I think this methodology can have direct application to your context. So you can actually go to groupwisdom.com to actually look at the software and see if it's applicable to you. And I can also drop the link in the chat. And then you can just check out the, I'm dropping the link in the chat right now so everybody can have it. And the software does everything for you. And what's important about this is that a lot of time when we do research, the researcher can have influence over the findings, right? In this context, we wanted firsthand knowledge from the people who are actually living during a pandemic. And all we do is let the software do analysis, and then we make meaning of that analysis. So to talk about the process broadly, we have focus groups where participants was asked to generate ideas with this focus group prompt that's voted. And then we asked those participants to sort those ideas into different piles within the software in accordance to themes, if you will. Like if there was a theme of like internet connectivity or economic issues. And then we asked the participants to rate each of these items twice, by importance and then by presence. So the participants across 5 focus groups generated 203 ideas. Those 203 ideas were reduced to 125 ideas because that's what the software can handle. And then those participants were asked to sort and rate those items twice. And again, the focus group prompt essentially was one challenge, struggle, or trouble that was a result of COVID-19 pandemic school closure. What's also cool about this, we chose to do focus groups because I wasn't that strong with the software, but I could have easily sent a link to participants and they could have done this asynchronously. And then over time, you just, and was actually, that's probably would have been a better approach because I wouldn't have had 203. If you see something that was already represented, you wouldn't have typed it in twice. Next slide. And what's also cool about concept mapping is a theory and method which can easily pair with other theoretical constructions and aims. So kind of in my work, I think about asset-based pedagogies. This can be an example as multicultural education, culture responsive teaching, culture relevant teaching, culture sustaining pedagogies, maybe cultural competency. And then also think about various critical theoretical constructions, things that lend itself to social critique. You know, you may think of Marx, right? And this isn't to, you know, I think social critique in this context isn't meant to be disruptive, but it's more about positionality. So we can look at things from a critical pedagogy point of view, looking at the curriculum. Is the curriculum being, is this the right curriculum or modality used during this COVID-19? Critical theory, looking at how capitalism and various identities are infected by COVID-19. Critical race theory, understand that critical race theory may not be an area of concern like it is in America, but you know, I know there's things with regards to maybe colorism, other things like that that could implicate one's upward mobility. Then we got critical feminist theory, looking at things from gender, and then we got critical social theory, and this is just kind of looking at, you know, the social implications of COVID-19. So, and you can use any of these kind of theories to pair with the concept mapping to make meaning of the findings on behalf and with the participants in the study. Next slide, please. So here's the first finding, and this is what's cited. I could not manipulate any of these concept maps. So essentially what happened is that the software generates these clusters for you, and these clusters can be studied closely to understand what exactly is going on in your context. The data can be desegregated by, so like I can like, so in the, you have a survey you put in there, you could put in there by geography, you can put in there by any kind of demographic information, you can desegregate the data and make concept maps just for that data set. So essentially concept maps gives a big picture overview of the domains of ideas. So some things that came up in my context, which I'm sure would be very similar to some things you may be hearing in yours, is academic environment concerns, academic challenges, challenges for teachers, communication and technology barriers. IT support was not the best for our context, socioeconomic inequalities, student and family challenges. school administrative challenges, communication issues, and trauma. And the little dots that you see represent each of the 125 items that were generated. And those dots are not placed any old kind of way. So this is placed along an X and Y axis, and it's done by magnitude of mean and in their connectivity to the relationship between one another. We can scoop to the next slide. I'll skip to the next slide. Next slide, please. Sorry. So the first clear data that came up that can actually be used is pattern matches. So essentially, this is a pattern match I did that showed the data within two, with both school systems combined. So really, I wanted to understand what was important and what was current. So as you see, wraparound services was very important, but you also see that it wasn't at current, meaning that when we went to school to an online platform, many of the functions that schools serve was not being able to serve those students anymore. A lot of students in our context get fed through school. School serves as a place for childcare where maybe parents have to work or whatnot. You can think about, we get basic health at school, hearing, dental, vision. So all of these things have been disrupted. You can also think about the social emotional support that students get at school. So that essentially those social interactions being disrupted, I think is causing difficulty in the teaching and learning environment. Another issue that I looked at was the challenges for English language learners and special education students. So essentially the challenges were very current, actually the most current thing, but didn't seem as important as some other things. And some other things to look at is trauma, as well as looking at socioeconomic inequalities, English language learner challenges, social emotional concerns, and then IT concerns. You can and another thing that was also interesting, if you look at the very bottom, challenges for teachers. Now we understand that teachers are very altruistic. So a lot of time they will put their students and families before their own well-being. And I think what happens there is that a lot of teachers are potentially getting stressed and burnt out. And I think it's important that we attend to their mental health and social emotional needs, so we can actually have them be around as this pandemic runs its course. Next slide, please. Then I also did a pattern match where I wanted to look at the importance. So to the left is school A, to the right is school B. So I wanted to kind of compare the two school systems. Both the school systems are very similar, but they are distinguished by geographics and economic capacity. So wraparound services was the most important thing in both school systems. You also kind of look at maybe what are the top 5 or 6 important things in both school systems, and it seems to be, uniformly that wraparound service, special education and English language learners, socioeconomic inequality, social emotional health, IT, and school administration challenges were kind of the top priorities. I think an also thing to note there is the communication technology barriers. It looks like school B had that a little bit more important than school A. Next slide. Then I also want to know what was actually happening at the time of this study. So I did this study around Labor Day. So Labor Day is an important milestone in education in America. That's kind of, you've been, everybody's come to school, you kind of get into your routine, and then you can kind of make some decisions based on that day. You go home, you get essentially a holiday, and then essentially teachers are essentially kind of buttoning up or addressing things that they saw in those first couple of weeks of school. So essentially, I will repeat this study a couple more times throughout the year to understand these changes on a longitudinal. And again, the most current challenge is English language learners and special education. And if you look at the challenges for teachers, it looks like that school B is having a lot of teacher challenges compared to school A. Then you can also see some other dynamics here as well. Now, with this information, this essentially should be kind of indicating to you what things need to be addressed within your locale or schooling system. We can skip to the next slide. Now, this is probably the most important and I would, I'm going to geek out a little bit, the most coolest feature of this software. So essentially, using data generated by the people who are actually in the school doing the work, this software will tell you what things you should be reactive to and what things you should be proactive to. So if you look on the x-axis, you will see the level of importance. If you look on the y-axis, you look at the level of presence. The Pearson with this was 0.64, so this is a very good correlation. And if you look at the four squares, if you look at the green square, which is the top right, these are the items that intersect as most important and most current. And then if you look at the yellow square, those are the items that were very important, but maybe not as current. So we kind of look at it two ways. The green is things you need to go address now. The things in the yellow are ideas you may want to prepare for. So I'm going to share some of these with you now. And some of these may be familiar as you, oh, it's not me. Next slide. Some of these may be familiar as you go. So you can just click and next slide. Click one. Okay. So this here, one of the top items that came up was the lack of appropriate computing devices and online platforms needed to educate students with disabilities. In education in America, a lot of these things are legal. I mean, there's legal implications. Students have, there are student advocacy groups that have lobbied for laws to protect these students and ensuring that they get a quality education. You may have a similar governance structure like this within the context of your education system. So we know traditionally education was thought to be a face-to-face kind of process, and many of those policies and laws were constructed as such. But with this online platform, it is showing, gaping limitations of online instruction. You can skip to the next one. Hit next, please. Another one that comes up is Wi-Fi spots. Internet in America is something that you have to pay for. So there's a lot of work where schools actually had to provide students with hotspots. Unfortunately, some of these hotspots did not work in every space within the city. And this is usually due to, is there enough power or strength for the Wi-Fi signal to connect to? Or is there, essentially capacity for that to happen? Or sometimes these families can be located in rural locales where, these services aren't readily available there. Next slide. Another one that was the online environment did not allow teachers to provide in-person assistance, scaffolding, pull-out, or differentiated instruction to students with IEPs and 504s, essentially with students with some type of learning ability that they may need support. So you're thinking about students who may have hearing impaired, speech impaired, some students who prefer to learn visually versus, auditory, all of these things are being inhibited by this remote online learning. Next slide, please. Lack of mental health assistance for teachers, students, and families. As this pandemic move on, it's becoming more stressful. Like I heard in the last presenter talking about the economic stress, a lot of stress is it correlates right with the economics, right? So unfortunately, when we look at families that come from socially economic disadvantaged households, they have to make real decisions. They have to decide, like, do I stay and watch my children or do I go to work? So what's happened is that a lot of, that is causing a lot of mental stress. Also, many of these teachers have children themselves. So as they are teaching, they have to kind of tend to their children in another room and they can get their education. So just thinking about how to support those processes. Next slide, please. A lack of guidance about keeping teachers safe as they return to provide face-to-face instruction. As you know, we have vaccines that are starting to roll out here in America. However, because of the political climate, probably and some other implications, we're not sure if people really have confidence in the vaccines, right? Because they was made in emergency nature, and there are a lot of misinformation and disinformation, things that I'm sure you have observed on the news. So, and that is causing a lot of, I think right now, I think they did a survey where 52% of people in the country would take a vaccine. Me personally, I need a little more information, but that's nor here or there. Next slide, please. Students, so now the next slide is going to talk about things that we should be proactive to. And these are things that's going to emerge out of the yellow section. So I'm certain that as I do this study again, after I'm gonna do one post-election, pre-election, kind of use that as a marker, we're gonna see if some things are either improving or not. And I think one thing that is starting to emerge is students at risk of self-harm as a result of social isolation. So because students are not getting those social emotional needs from their peers, their teachers, essentially putting them in some depressive states. And unfortunately, those depressive states can materialize into suicide or school dropout, whatever. And I think these are things that we need to think about. Next slide, please. The next one is children having to take on adult roles. Again, a lot of time in households where everybody in the house has to, to carry their weight with work or whatever, essentially leads the children to fend for themselves. So you ask some children to essentially log on, make sure they're on these computers, unsupervised by their parents. And in many decisions, parents or family members are actually going to work and leaving these children unsupervised and relying on maybe an older sibling to essentially facilitate the educative process, essentially kind of taking away their childhood and not allowing them to actually be a child within this stressful global pandemic. Next slide, please. Students are experiencing abuse, which it just, this was one of those findings that were just kind of surprising to me. Like this one kind of shocked me that students are experiencing abuse physically, mentally, sexually by parents, guardians, or siblings. So I guess this kind of goes back to how school is more than just schools. Schools are kind of hubs for safety for students, right? Allowing students to escape these type of traumas or abuse. Next slide, please. School had challenges, concerns with identifying teachers at risk with underlying or pre-existing conditions that make them susceptible to contracting COVID-19. We have HIPAA laws here, essentially laws that protect your medical privacy, right? So now with COVID-19, it's kind of outing all of our personal business, right? Like, before these things were kind of private, but it's almost like we are asked to like be a little more transparent about our COVID status. And I think schools are having a hard time to deal with that because in this country, that's kind of teetering with some things that are illegal or not. Next slide, please. And I can't know this is coming up. So teachers were unable to adapt pedagogical approaches required to be effective in online remote platforms. For example, students have a limited attention span online, so teachers have to use effective strategies to keep students engaged. There's only so much you can do online. Like I'm looking at, it's only so much, I can do right here, to try to keep you engaged and try to make the teaching and learning experience one that's interactive and engaging. As we keep progressing through this pandemic, we're going to run out of tricks, so you may have to consider, do we need to shorten school days? Do we need to maybe decrease the number of days students have to come to school during the week? Because at some point the students are going to check out. So, and they are checking out, right? And it may be more effective to be mindful of how long we have students engaged via the screen time and things like that. Next screen, please. So I'm going to discuss some potential implications, and then when time's for Q&A, I'd be happy to answer some questions regarding. Next slide. So essentially with this study, with the Group Wisdom software, this software essentially allowed me to develop information that was from the people, if you will. Like this wasn't people that had no relative connection to the teaching and learning context, guessing and projecting ideas on what we should do and should not do. We actually have data that can help inform what decisions are to be made in the schooling process as we progress through COVID-19. So one thing that we're looking to do is develop a preparedness checklist or survey, essentially using those 125 items using those 14 categories and kind of making surveys that a school system can use to check and see if they have everything in place needed to provide quality instruction and teaching during pandemic. We also going to develop resource guides and white papers, essentially writing reports as we do these studies to disseminate information to the general public, not academics. So even parents, teachers can, community members, businesses can understand what COVID impacts are in the community. I have already made policy recommendations to state legislators here in Virginia, mainly focusing on teacher burnout, IDEA, and special education and English language learners. And then also, so those are the two big ones that I really addressed. And then obviously I'm working on some academic and professional publications to disseminate this information globally. So I think that's the conclusion of my presentation. Hopefully some of these ideas can be useful. I think the main takeaway I would like everybody to get from this is that we have software that we can use, that we can actually get information firsthand from the people that are living in these varied spaces during COVID-19. And that information can be analyzed and used in ways that can lead to data informed action, if you will, to make the teaching and learning experience, more pleasurable or more effective during COVID-19. So that's it. You can next slide, please. If you have any questions, you can reach me via my email or on Twitter, and I'd be happy to share any additional information that comes up. Thank you very much. Hopefully that was useful information.
Thank you very much. The big applause for you. Only me, I think. That is the challenge of online, This is like online teaching, that we have a limitation regarding how to deal with, how to make the situation in the class, online class, still, always living and cheering up kind of things. That's our challenge. We also experience the same things, but the interesting thing from you is that you go in very details about the implications of doing learning, online learning, especially for students at kindergarten. Is that in kindergarten, right?
Well, it's kind of across the spectrum, but many of the teachers were elementary, but I had some high school teachers, some high school principals. So it covered everybody essentially. So I'm going to replicate the study and actually do it across like 13 school districts to understand what it looks like within the region.
So that's very interesting. Thanks so much, Dr. Dwight. And for all participants, if you got the problem regarding how to understand the words or the language of the presenters, sorry I use bahasa. Kalau Bapak Ibu pegang HP dan kemudian bisa membuka Google Translate, coba Bapak Ibu buka Google Translate dan kemudian nanti ada speak di sana. Coba didekatkan kepada suaranya. Pengalaman dari Profesor Dennis Jepson ketika datang ke sini, dia mengikuti presentasi bahasa Indonesia dan dia hidupkan Google Translate-nya dari HP dan tertulis bahasa Indonesia di sana. Jadi nanti Bapak Ibu tinggal dicoba saja. Tadi saya tidak bisa mencobanya karena suara dari presenter ini adanya di dalam mic besar, jadi tidak begitu masuk ke HP saya. Tetapi ketika saya tempelkan HP saya dan saya ngomong bahasa Inggris, itu muncul kalimat bahasa Indonesianya. Dicoba saja, mudah-mudahan it works, sehingga mungkin lebih memudahkan Bapak Ibu untuk memahami apa yang disampaikan oleh presenter dari luar negeri ini. I told them, Dr. Dwight and also Professor Dennis Jepson, that the participants can turn on the Google Translate and translating using the voice. So if you speak in English and we turn on the voice translation in Google Translate, so it will come up with bahasa so they can understand what you are talking. Okay, now coming to my beloved Professor Dennis Jepson. Well, he is my professor when I was doing PhD at Macquarie University for 3 years and a half, and until now we still have very good relationship with her and doing collaboration and research. Well, I would like to welcome Professor Dennis Mary Jepson, PhD from Macquarie University, Sydney, Australia. He is a professor at Management Department, Macquarie Business School, Macquarie University, Sydney, Australia. And education, from her education is in postgraduate certificate in higher education, Macquarie University, PhD at Macquarie University as well, Master in Organization Psychology at Macquarie University, and Bachelor of Psychology Honors at University of New England. And also she did varied business and professional development programs, many here. And she got many university and other prizes and awards. So how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 34, more than 40. Oh, my amazing professor. And also I have count the publications before presenting this, so I've got around 32 publications from Professor Dennis Jepson, and I think there will be coming up other new publications from her, I'm very sure, and including with me as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome Professor Dennis Jepson, that's going to talk about the age of avocado or alpukat leader, turning crisis into catalyst. And if you have seen the presentations of her, it's so very interesting, because there are many pictures and also only some words that I think very interesting. So I think Denise will explain that more, and so I would like to welcome Professor Dennis Jepson to give her presentation.
Thank you so much, Daddy. Can I just check? I've shared my screen. Can you see my screen? Can you give me thumbs up if you can see my screen?
Yes. Can you see the screen?
Okay, so you can see a blue screen with avocados on.
Yes.
Excellent. Alrighty, what fun! It's great to be back there, but I wish I were actually there. I miss you so much.
I miss you so much too.
Yeah, it's so good to see you. All right, let's get started, shall we? And Dwayne, it was great to hear your presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to just go back in time to pre-COVID, and is Rector on the call, and you know, I was on stage there, probably not far from where you are now, and in your classrooms, and what fun I had. And I wonder if any of those papers have been written or published yet. The world was so different then, wasn't it?
Yes.
No, we had no idea of what was around the corner. I had such a fun time.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. My daughter was just so excited to be there. And I want to know, is that building finished yet?
Yes, it has been finished.
Has it? Excellent.
Yes.
I want to come and see it.
Yes.
I don't want to be looking at it over a Zoom call. I want to be looking at it. But I wasn't just at the university when I was there. I had a look at your organizations and your buildings and your institutions, and I had a look at a peek inside some of your work environments, and that allowed me to get a sense of what your country is about and your part of your country. Now, I was only there for a week or two, so I don't have a good sense, but I've got a glimmer. I've got a couple of weeks, and of course I've had Daddy in my ear for a couple of years, so if that counts. So there were some rattan manufacturers and a bank that we went to. The food, did I mention the food? Yum. There was so much nice food. But I think the highlight has to be the
It's my
children.
village.
Yes, it is. It's Denny's village. So thank you for welcoming me back again. I must admit the travel time was much easier this time. But all right, so I'm going to talk to you today about three things. I'm going to talk about using the avocado analogy to talk about an emerging trend in leadership research. And then I'm going to be talking about the impact of COVID on how we lead business and how our research changed. And then I'm going to give you a gift. All right, so let's get started. A little bit of context to start with. And I was thinking, on the one hand, oh, this is so different to being in Cirebon or being in Indonesia. And then I realized, actually, you invited me because I'm not local. You invited me to get an external perspective. And it was really interesting to hear Dwayne's comments, because Dwayne and his country is right in the thick of an escalating and blowing out of proportion COVID condition. Whereas in Australia, we're at what we call triple figures or double donuts, where we get no new cases and no deaths. So we're able to be a little bit more reflective, I think, on the COVID lessons. We're also, I should say, we're very anxious. So we sit on the side of on the edge of our seats, waiting for the next outbreak, waiting for the next cases. And the minute there are new cases, either the local areas go into lockdown or the wider areas. We don't feel fearless. We don't feel smug. In fact, we did feel a little bit smug when the numbers were very good, and then you may have heard that Melbourne exploded. We had hundreds and hundreds of cases in Melbourne and hundreds of deaths down there. So that got rid of the smugness of our attitude towards COVID. So in terms of leadership, our leaders are starting to get back into action, into a sort of a post-COVID kind of mindset. So let's look at leadership more generally, and let's look at the context here in Australia. Around a fifth, nearly 22% of our leaders every year terminate or resign or leave that organisation. There's a really high turnover. Something is afoot, something's not right with such a high level of turnover. What's happening, there are many things happening, but one of the things that's happening is customers have much greater sway these days than before. And I'm not going to say what I mean exactly by these days and before. For some industries it's a year ago, for other industries it's 5 years ago. For example, 63% of people in a recent study prefer to buy from purpose-driven organisations. So organisations like Nike that are holding themselves up to meet society's expectations are doing well, and they're doing nicely. The ivory towers of the past have given way. Not only have consumers and customers got more sway, but also employees within an organisation have greater sway. Think about social media. Think about how easy it is to communicate now using social media. Deddy just texted me a little while ago. You would think he was around the corner. Well, he practically is. Think about royal commissions. Now in Australia, we have a number of royal commissions. We've currently got one in aged care, but last year we had a royal commission into banking. I'll come back to that. Before we get to that, what I wanted to talk about was this idea of transparency, that now we are looking inside organisations. It used to be that smoke and mirrors, you could do pretty well whatever you liked it behind closed doors in an organisation, and you would get away with it. It would be a rare whistleblower who might expose some rotten things going on inside an organisation. Whereas now, social media, royal commissions, but also, have you heard of glassdoor.com? Hands up if you've heard of that. I can see a couple of faces there. Let me show you glassdoor.com. It's a review site where employees talk about their employer. You know, wise to have a look at it. Look at this. It's got a rating system so you can rate your employer. I worked at this place full time. What was good about it? Well, they had nice snacks. That's really good, isn't it? They had nice co-workers and free snacks. So that's nice to know. However, look at other aspects of the transparency. Toxic, look at the cons here. Toxic work environment. Most are walking around thinking they'll be fired next. The leadership is poor, to say the least. Communication is non-existent. The pressure on employees is ridiculous. Extremely high turnover. There are a number of things to notice about this. One of them is the fact that we get to see this information, that transparency. Another is the fact that employees are willing to write about it. This person has clearly left that organisation. So, what does this mean? Well, as I said, we've had a Royal Commission into banking in Australia. The culture of these organisations, these institutions, and AMP is one of our largest and oldest institution, banking and insurance institution. And its societal expectations have changed. And the leaders in AMP weren't up to date with it. They weren't keeping up to speed with what society was expecting. The Royal Commission has now required that now that the light has been shone on these organisations, the Royal Commission has illuminated some of the absolutely rotten practices that have been going on behind those closed doors. If it's not the Royal Commission, it could be Glassdoor, or it could be some other social media that is exposing these, or whistleblowers. All right. Am I going too fast, too soft, or too slow, or just right, Deddy?
It's all right.
Great. All right. So, if things are so rotten, what is going on? Let's look at soft skills. Now, a simple Google search for soft skills, and I updated this yesterday, will give you 658 million hits. Try writing that into a training course or a unit for teaching students. So gurus are out there, they're selling the power of empathy, of authenticity, adaptive leadership styles. In theory, this is all great, and the expectations on leaders are really quite high. But there's a conflict in the traditional leadership theory. The majority of executives are incentivised by growth, by revenue, by income, by hard metrics, by productivity, by profitability, not by their level of empathy or self-awareness. So we've got these two opposing views. The idea is a bit firm, but it's a bit green, but the logic stands. The future of leadership is in balance. Balance between the hard and the soft skills of what we're now calling the avocado leader. Deddy, do you call them avocados?
Alpukat.
Alpukat.
Yeah, that's
okay.
alpukat in the Indonesian language.
Okay, and do you eat a lot of them?
Yes, we eat it.
Excellent. So do I. I would have them probably 3 or 4 days a week on my. In fact, I've got some here in my lunch that I'm having today. So the avocado leader is a metaphor for the leader that is both hard on the outside and commercially focused, but soft on, sorry, did I say hard on the outside? I meant hard on the inside. A leader who is soft and empathetic exterior, but it's balanced with that harder commercially focused core. We need to have both. Let me give you a case study of a global telecommunications business where the executive team was struggling to make decisions, and they were putting the entire business at risk. The dysfunction of the team was hiding an issue that would essentially destroy the business and their reputation. Do you know the expression, they put their head in the sand to ignore the problem? We have lots of beautiful beaches in Australia, and putting your head in the sand, it's not very comfortable, but it's something you can do if you just don't want to have to deal with what's going on. And that's what this organisation was doing. So the question is, why were they doing that? These leaders, they were smart leaders. They'd been graduated from the best schools. They were pragmatic. They had experience. This was not their first job. They knew how to progress the activities and the projects. They were very technical. They were smart. They'd graduated from the right schools. So they had the hardcore. They had that hardcore. What they didn't have was they didn't know that it was okay to be wrong. They didn't know that it was okay to have your colleagues challenge you. The fear of being challenged, the fear of being wrong, paralysed these leaders. The business critical decisions that they made, they came up with in isolation. They were brave, they were strong, they were the leaders of yesterday. So, to balance the hard and the soft, we need to help our leaders understand this notion about psychological safety. Psychological safety is a term that was invented by Amy Edmondson of Harvard University. And psychological safety, I think it was back in the late 90s, Amy started work on this. And they're the cultural conditions that allow people to openly challenge, take risks, and be vulnerable in the workplace. Instead of being scared, instead of being worried, instead of being nervous that they were not going to be able to make a contribution, or that they'd be laughed at, or that they didn't know enough, or that their perspective didn't count. So, we know that psychological safety matters. We know how to measure it. We know how to improve it. Going back to this case study, here were some key ideas for balancing the hard with the soft. When my colleague Nick Tucker was putting in place some accountability measures so that they could observe psychological safety, and they would be encouraged to keep going with this psychological safety rather than trying it once after the conference and being all nice and pleasant to one another, but to keep it up. So what are some of those ideas that we're now teaching leaders? We're teaching them to explicitly ask your colleagues to challenge you. Those of you who know the 7 hats metaphor, that book by, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Explicitly ask for challenges. What am I missing? What have I done wrong? What are other ways of looking at that? The second point, seek conflicting opinions to challenge your own decision making. I know Fred doesn't like this idea, so I'm going to go to him and ask him, what do you think, Fred? How can I improve this? How might this not work? Why might this fail? To be able to drop that ego and to allow for the soft to accompany the hard. To acknowledge that everyone, including you, has an unconscious bias, that I come to this from this perspective. I'm the marketing person, or I'm the finance person, or I'm the HR person, or I'm the whatever person, whatever that role is, the engineering or the technical role. Everyone's got a bias, everyone's got a perspective. And the last piece of advice is to encourage the most senior person in the room to speak last, so that the least senior person in the room is likely to be less intimidated. Okay, so we did this research together with this organisation, this consulting group called We Are Unity, in that many organisations employing that many employees. And we've done a couple of these studies over the last couple of years looking at progressive people and culture differences. So that's giving organisations a competitive advantage through their people and culture initiatives. Looking at it over the last 10 years, the radical reinvention, well, we thought it was radical, didn't we? And then part two, COVID hit. Then we really start to look at radical reinvention. So COVID hit and our focus shifted. We moved our research focus. We decided not to just go for the negatives, but go for the positives. How can we understand and sustain the benefits of COVID-19? And that was really cool to conduct those interviews. 87% of senior leaders said they reckon their organisations were agile in responding to COVID. This is a quote from a financial institution. We've thrown a lot out the window that we've realised we simply don't need. We now need to redesign our ways of working to enable our people to catch up with the amount of transformation that COVID-19 has driven. Huge transformations. 63% of organisations have improved their innovation. We heard amazing stories, and I'm sure you're hearing it. Look at us today, looking at how much time I've saved by being able to stay at work, although I know where I'd rather be. Improved productivity. Here I can keep going. I can work in 2 places at once, but it's not just about Zoom. There have been productivity improvements all over the country in almost not every institution, but the large organisations. Now remember, this is corporate Australia that was the subject of this research. It was not small and medium enterprises. It was not mums and dads businesses. It was the big money corporates that are the subject of this research. So they were the organisations that had the funding to stay in business when those first early hits arrived. One of the examples to give you here is one of the interviewees was telling us that their IT, their information technology department, had a 3-year plan. I think it was about 6 or 8 projects to fulfill in the next 3 years. That was back in February or January. They had achieved all of those projects within 6 months of COVID having hit. Look at that amazing innovation, the amazing productivity, that sort of thing. Now we also look at, well, what happens to those people? Does that mean IT doesn't have a job anymore? Are they going to invent new projects for them? Okay, we need some psychological safety as well to be able to have those conversations. 32% of the organisations we spoke with improved their psychological safety. There was almost no question about it for many leaders, in that suddenly for the first time they're seeing inside the families and the homes of their employees. Their executives that had previously worked hugely long hours at the office, only ever seen behind a desk. Now the questions were asked: where do you live? Do you have internet access? How's your laptop? Do you have at home? Suddenly this soft exterior was almost thrust upon them. Some did it better than others. I know of some managers who just found it was a terrific opportunity to just hide, and they didn't have to deal with anything, and they didn't have people coming into their office. Well, their HR departments have been telling them a lot about improved psychological safety since then. So going back to our leader, our avocado leader, and I'm just keeping an eye on the time. Okay, we've got the hard and we've got the soft. On the hard exterior, we've got decisiveness. We've got the pandemic increased the speed and confidence in decision making. We decided that any decision was better than no decision when the pandemic was hitting. Leaders said the crisis forced them to think and act fast, and as a result, the pace of the pandemic quickly and visibly separated the good from the bad. Managers were able to very quickly work out who was on board and who was not on board, and we just didn't bother spending time with those who were not on board. At middle manager level, the crisis pace demanded an increase in trust. Once we have to go remote, you need more trust. You need to just rely on that person doing the job. And that empowered an even broader collective of employees to make the necessary decisions to keep the business moving forward. We've yet to see how that reintegrates back into business as usual when those employees come back to the office and are then more heavily supervised than they have been for most of the year. On the other hand, empathy, COVID-19 not only blurred the lines between the home and office, it also brought the mandatory duty of care. Health of our employees was a requirement. Empathetic skill development became a key focus of capability building, with leaders tasked with authentically demonstrating care, understanding and support for both their teams and their own well-being. Suddenly, they had to really care about those employees who were scared of coming into the office. In our instance, who was scared of catching a train or catching a bus to work? How were they going to be able to get to work? Where were they? In many instances, they created new car parks so that employees were able to drive themselves if they had to come to the office. In terms of connectedness, internal networking and coaching sessions, cultural team building activities, we found that leaders are now reporting a stronger and more human connection with their employees. My own son works for a large corporate that has very plush offices in the city. However, he hasn't been there since the end of February. But one of his managers recently came out to the suburbs, and about half a dozen of his colleagues who work in this general area had lunch just near the uni, Deddy. You would probably know the restaurant where they had lunch. These are really different behaviours that we're seeing from leaders. And leading organisations are now looking to capture those behaviours that were observed during COVID and building it back into the values of the organisation so that leaders can understand the behaviours that were so essential during that emergency time. Okay, noting what the time is, I've only got a minute or two left. How can we grow avocado or alpacat leaders? All right, three things really. We need to reset our expectations. We need a balance between the hard commercial acumen, results-driven, and the soft empathy and emotional intelligence needed to create psychological safety. Leaders need to create an environment that helps employees share their ideas, disrupt and challenge, but not at the expense of business priorities. The art is to skillfully ask for challenge, and if you disagree, then explain the business reasons why. We need to reset expectations about what leadership behaviours are required to deliver on strategy, and we need to hold leaders accountable for those. We need to build capability to manage the hard with the soft. So we need to upskill those managers in how to have those soft skills. We need to develop a business case for investing time in those soft skills, because let's face it, a lot of those finance people don't want to spend money unless they can see a direct line output, can they? Leaders who demonstrate empathy, authenticity, and emotional intelligence can help the organisation accelerate growth, innovation, and create an environment where the best ideas win. And last, we need to hold leaders accountable. Greater appetites for transparency and accountability is leading some boards to hire a psychologist to give feedback at their meetings. Transparency drives performance because it helps leaders understand what behaviours to prioritise over the rest. If you can get transparency right, you can get a competitive advantage. The key for any organisation is to stick with it. Nothing will change if you're not prepared to hold leaders accountable for being leaders. All right. So, at the start of the presentation, I promised you a gift. Even though I'm all the way here and you're all the way there. So, my gift is, what should I do with rotten avocados? What should I do with rotten alpacats? You know, when they've had a few days extra in the bowl and you should have eaten them yesterday or the day before, or worse, a couple of days ago? Okay, so this is what you do with them. Here's a recipe. Turn them into yummy chocolate brownies. Okay? The future of leadership requires balance. Too soft, and we will never get the executive buy-in or investment. If it's too hard, we will continue to build cultures that inhibit psychological safety, growth and innovation, and will continue to appear like that example on glassdoor.com. So, can I urge you, take a screenshot or have a look at the video, the recipe later. Eat yourself some avocados. Think about the hard and the soft skills that are required in this is it post-COVID world? Think of what we've learned from COVID, and I wish you well. Thank you and stay safe.
Thanks so much. Thank you very much, Professor Dennis Jepson. It's so nice. It teaches us how to become the very, soft leader, but also hard leader with complete kind of soft and hard skills. It's really, really nice. I think we need to have a look at the paper that we just talking. If you have published it or you have the access to the paper.
Sure.
Yes, and also about the research that you just talking about. What is it? Have a look at it. Like,
I'll send you the report.
Yeah, the report. And it's studies about the past 2 years about 277 organizations. That's so nice.
Oh, that's not finished yet.
Oh, not finished yet.
No.
Looking forward to.
But I can send you the avocado report.
Yes.
Actually, I might be able to put the link to it on the chat.
Great.
I'll look for it.
Okay, great. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So we have finished hearing 3 presentations from our 3 great scholars and invited speakers from Professor Razana Johari, from Dr. Dwayne Ray Comie, and Professor Dennis Murray Jepson, PhD. Now is our turn to have the questions from the audience. If you have questions, you can raise your hand and talk and turn on your Zoom, and you can talk. If you need the translation, you can speak it in Bahasa and I will translate it to English.
Thank you.
Anybody? So I think I've got the questions that haven't been answered by Ibu Razana regarding the response from people in Malaysia. They are satisfied with what the government has done regarding dealing with the COVID-19. So can you just talk a bit about that? So is it because the government have various kind of measures, or because the quality of each measure that the government has done?
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Dedi. All right, so in responding to questions by Ibu Wiwit, all right, So the first question is about what is the support, right, from the government to reduce the negative effects of COVID-19 on the performance. So I think this sort of performance, okay, of the company, okay, the government already can have the views that the performance, of course, will be affected by this COVID-19. All right. So that's why, okay, if I could share screen, all right. Okay, so can everybody have a look on my shared screen, Mr. Dedi?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So as I already mentioned just now during the presentations, okay. So currently Malaysia already introduced 4 packages, all right, for the financial stimulus package. Okay. So as we can see, all right, the government already acknowledged the problems of having a very challenging performance for the companies to survive, isn't it, in these conditions of COVID-19. Okay, so that's why, okay, as early as in package 1, all right, in this one, package 1 is being introduced in February, end of February and early May, like that. All right, so they already include some of the stimulus, okay, some of the measures that actually can help the companies in order to cope with this such of challenges, okay, from their economic income. All right, so as we can see here, okay, for example, I just actually managed to get only some of the stimulus package items here. The first one here, exemption of import duty and sales tax for 3 years for the purchase of machinery and equipment imported and local for port operations starting from April 1st, 2020. So I think this is a very fast action from the government, right, that have been conducted to help, okay, the companies. Okay, and as also been mentioned here, Bank Negara Malaysia offering SME automation and digitalization facility of 300 million, encourage private investment and partnership between the public and private sectors. All right, allocation of 40 million RM, okay, to the SMEs. Okay, so I think this such of helps, okay, that be provided by the management is actually to cover up the negative effect of this COVID-19 on the firm's performance. And okay, this one is stimulus package 4, which I think is the best package. All right, the best package that the government has introduced, because in this package, okay, they actually have 3 core aspects that they try to help, okay, the nation to build up the economic of the country. Okay, so out of the 40 initiative, 14 initiatives is to boost the business performance, right? This one. Okay, so I think almost half, all right, 14 out of 40 initiative, all right. So this is just purposely to boost the business performance, all right. So whatever companies, okay, they can actually have these advantages, okay, they can apply, okay, for this initiative that already being offered by the management. Okay, so as we also noticed, okay, just now I have shared the surveys that has been conducted, all right, on the nations, on the business firms, all right, regarding their perceptions on what the government's action, okay, how far they are actually satisfied or not satisfied. And 70%, more than 70% are actually satisfied, all right, with the initiative that have been conducted by the government. Okay. So for the second question, okay, is there any possibility that the firm will do window dressing to cover the firm financial performance in order to give positive signal for the investor? Yes, of course. All right, this is a very hard time for the company, for the business. All right, so as we know, window dressing, although not in this type hard time also, they managed to do it. All right, so what else left for this situation? Okay, so perhaps there would be try, okay, to boost, okay, to make goods on the statements. Okay, all right, so I think to answer this one, Any possibility? Yes, of course. All right. So that's why if we can actually recall back, all right, the auditors, okay, the auditors are being having such of very high responsibility nowadays in order to audit the company. All right. Why? Because there is the occurrences of these window dressings to happen. All right. So the audit firms also already have taken the steps that they need to do on how to do the remote auditing, on how to train their auditors to become more skeptical in making their judgment, in making their evaluations on the company's performance. Okay, so yes, for this question, yes, of course. All right, okay, because all people want to survive now, right? All right, so that's all I think, Mr. Didi.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Razana. And could you please, Dr. Twine, to have an idea regarding this question, maybe for the context of United States? That is, as we know that COVID-19 has significant impact on many industries and its implication on the financial performance. What is support that the government do to reduce the negative effect of COVID on the firm performance? As far as you know, in the United States, what the government do to support the firms, especially maybe SMEs, small and medium enterprises?
So I'm assuming, are you asking how has the government supported businesses in our state?
Yes, in this COVID-19.
Yeah, very similar to what was presented by the first presenter, stimulus packages. Unfortunately, we live in a very capitalistic driven society. So, I think they tried to do their best, but, there was cases where some larger businesses probably applied for those stimulus packages but didn't need them. And because of the social action that was discussed in Dr. Jepson's slide, some of those companies, through court of public opinion, was kind of forced to return those monies. So I think anecdotally, I know a lot of small businesses like mom and pop shops really had a hard time getting access to some of those rapid response grants or whatever, because maybe they didn't have the capacity or a legal or a lawyer to help them sift through those. So a lot of bureaucracy, right? So that was kind of with the businesses, but then they also did stimulus for, families. So if you made under, I think, $100,000, you was able to get a $1,200 stimulus check. I think they did that twice. Right now, as y'all probably watching, our national leader is he stopped governing. So I'm not sure, what's going to happen with regard to, those kind of things that we need immediately, because as it's been referenced that we are actually living through a third spike. And right now in my state, we have already kind of went back to a modified shutdown. And I think if it keeps increasing, we probably gonna go back to a full shutdown. And it's going to be very important that the government supports us in the ways that it did before. So.
Thank you, Dr. Twine. Bapak Ibu sekalian, Twine mengatakan seperti juga yang terjadi di beberapa negara bahwa ada semacam stimulus juga untuk para pelaku UKM, tetapi juga ada banyak pelaku UKM yang tidak bisa mendapatkan dana dikarenakan masalah perizinan, dia tidak punya lawyer gitu, dan itu terjadi seperti di Amerika begitu. Kurang lebih seperti itu yang disampaikan oleh beliau. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Dennis Jepson has to leave our session because she has another meeting, so she does apologize to us and she leaves our meeting. But if there is a question, from the audience, you can post it in the chat and I will send it to her. Oke, Bapak Ibu sekalian, kalau ada pertanyaan berikutnya silahkan Bapak Ibu postingkan pertanyaannya, atau mungkin mau disampaikan dengan bahasa Indonesia itu tidak masalah. Silahkan mungkin dari ini yang lain, selain ini dari Miss Lia. Dari Miss Lia dituliskan di sini pertanyaannya.
Oke, saya Pak, mau nanya Pak.
Oke, Pak Usep. Oke, go ahead Pak Usep.
Hello Dwayne.
Hey, how you doing, Usep?
Good, how are you?
Long time no see.
Yeah. So thank you for the insightful presentation about your project, and also thank you for being with us today, or night Brisbane time. So I'm interested in, I mean, your methodology, like how did you combine your like concept mapping into your, what is it, exploratory and mixed method? So how did you do that? So can you have like to elaborate on more detail?
Yeah, fortunately, the group wisdom software I used did a lot of it for you. I mean, her name Mary Cochran actually went to a training, and she actually facilitated training firsthand. So maybe years ago you had to type in the code and this and that, but essentially the quantitative part is it's a linear regression, and maybe where in the past you would have to calculate that. The software does that automatically for you, so it gives you the Pearson correlation. The thing that is labor intensive is the qualitative part. So you have to look at those items, look at those concept maps. There's buttons that you can hit where you see a list of items per each cluster, and you have to really start generating some things, especially if you have aims of, and it's really dependent on the utility of your study. So if you're trying to provide information for like administrative education, how to be more responsive to students and families from maybe lower economic from low socioeconomic statuses, then you can have this kind of empirical data to help.
Interesting project. So I'm looking forward to read the report.
Oh, thank you.
Should be interesting if I can read your report and your publication as well.
Oh yeah, I will send it to USEP, and I think you will send it up or down where it needs to go.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, Dwayne. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, next opportunities for ladies and gentlemen, for participants to raise questions to our two invited speakers, to Dr. Razana and to Dr. Dwayne. Dr. Razana is talking about how to deal with the economy after the COVID-19.
I could probably quickly add that the software is not intimidating. Anyone can use it. I mean, that's what I like about the software, that you don't have to be an academic to use the software. It's really a school leader can use it, small business owner, anyone that does any kind of social work can use this software and use it as a tool to make data informed decisions. So it's not intimidating at all.
I will look at it. I try.
Dwayne, do you have a plan to visit Indonesia in the future?
I do. I do want to come see my dear friend. So I think we were talking about it briefly, but COVID. But as soon as this kind of blows over, I'll be on the first plane.
Out of 3 speakers for today, only you that hasn't been in Indonesia, because Denise Jepson, Dr. Razana have been here before. So we're looking forward to your coming to Indonesia and your visits to UGJ.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it as well.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, seems to be almost 12 in Indonesian and Jakarta time now. Not sure in Dwayne, what time are you there?
It's 15 minutes to 12.
Okay, in the midnight.
Yes, midnight.
We have to get to sleep, I think. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention, for your questions, and a great thanks, millions of thanks to our honorable presenters, great presenters, invited speakers, Dr. Razana and Dr. Dwayne, for your great presentations. This occasion, we're gonna have the session with you. In the future, we're gonna build more collaborations with both of you and with your institutions as well. Yeah, like maybe with Dwayne, maybe in the future, we're gonna have more collaborations with your university as well. For me, in Macquarie University, we have collaborated in research and also with your ITM, later on with your University in United States. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much. Oke, Bapak Ibu sekalian, ladies and gentlemen, terima kasih banyak atas perhatian Bapak Ibu sekalian, dan kita harap acara ini bisa memberikan benefits to all of us dan kita bisa menindak future for our career and for our generations. Thanks so much for Dr.